Big East women's basketball is in full swing, and today, T. Baker, the next Big East beat reporter, is here to chat all about UConn, who is picked again to finish first in the conference. We'll also check in with other teams around the league, take a look back at what we talked about in our Big East preview podcast back in November, as well as look ahead to the rest of the season. Locked On Women's Basketball starts now.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and happy Friday. You are Locked On to Women's Basketball. I'm Natalie Heavren, and I'm a features writer and the Atlantic 10 beat reporter for The Next. Your favorite podcast now has a newsletter. Introducing the Locked On NBA Daily Newsletter. One stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com and start your day with the all-new free Locked On NBA newsletter. If this is your first time listening to Locked On Women's Basketball, welcome. We at The Next have over 100 reported pieces every single month. We have a beat reporter on every single WNBA team, one on more than 15 different NCAA beats, including the two of us. So get that YouTube subscription up, and you can also support us by subscribing to The Next for $9 a month or $72 a year at thenexthoops.com. Today, we'll be chatting all about Big East Conference favorite UConn. We'll check in with other teams around the league, take a look back at what we talked about in our Big East preview podcast back in November, as well as look ahead to the rest of the season. Joining me today is The Next Big East beat writer, T. Baker. Okay, T, so I just introduced you, but let's cut to the chase. Let's just start with what we always have to talk about. What's the latest UConn injury update?
Yes, thank you for the question. Thanks for being here. For those watching on YouTube, we didn't plan our blue sweaters, but we are both wearing blue sweaters. So we're in sync today. So as it relates to UConn's injuries, it's just been a really tough past several years. I will say that in terms of how bad it has gotten over the past several years, in this moment, we are in a season of less injuries than usual, I think, than it's been over the past 5 years. People may have heard that of UConn's All-American guard, Paige Bueckers, went down the other day in a game with a knee injury. It turns out it's just a knee sprain. It looked pretty gnarly on the court, but seems like no structural damage, no tears. So she missed yesterday's game against Xavier, expected to miss about a week, but should be back in the rotation soon. And then, the other two players are players who have missed significant time in their UConn careers. It's, Ayanna Patterson. She is a redshirt sophomore. She had a season-ending shoulder surgery. So this is her second consecutive missed season. Hopefully with this shoulder surgery, she's back to, a strength level that will be able to sustain her the rest of her college career, but we haven't seen much of her at UConn. And then finally, Caroline Ducharme, who's struggled with the side effects of having a concussion, has experienced migraine. So she's working towards a potential return. She's a redshirt junior. This would be her fourth year of college basketball. So Gino did mention she's not planning to redshirt. So if she does come back, it'll be sometime this season. And we'll see, right? I mean, it's risky whenever we have sort of concussion-related injuries, so we'll see kind of how that plays out and if Caroline is able to return to the lineup.
Well, thank you for that. And one day I dream of talking Big East basketball without talking about injuries. But, on that note, I was live at UConn's game against Xavier on Wednesday and saw the team without Bueckers. 4 players scored in double figures, and freshman Alice Bell had 5 3-pointers. Jana Al-Alfi, Sarah Strong, and Azzi Fudd, who had a season-high 23 points for the others in double figures. But who do you think will need to fill in the gaps before Bueckers comes back?
Yeah, it was a little bit of a tough assessment yesterday because, Xavier is improving, but is just overmatched by UConn. So it wasn't really a great sort of test of kind of how this team will perform against, really more evenly matched competition. But I think with Paige out, it obviously brings more minutes for backup guard KK Arnold, who's been coming off the bench, kind of at the point guard position, handling the ball alongside Caitlin Chen, who's the other kind of ball handler guard on UConn's team. So I think that that role of being the ball handler, being the point guard on the court will probably fall to sophomore guard KK Arnold, while AZ Fudd and freshman Sarah Strong, they're going to be the ones relied upon for scoring. I think we noticed when AZ was out, because again, it's just a montage of UConn injuries, Paige and Sarah really picked up the scoring, and I anticipate with Paige out, AZ and Sarah are going to pick up that scoring. And based on last night, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, I feel like we have to talk about Sarah Strong, since I don't think the two of us have talked about her on air. We've talked a lot about her off air. But since even before the preseason game, how would you rate how she's impacted the team this season, like meeting or exceeding expectations?
Yeah, well, UConn's head coach, Hall of Famer Gino Auriemma, before the season mentioned that Sarah Strong is the type of player who changes the trajectory of a program. And, it's hard to kind of hear that from someone like Gino, who's had so many players like that over the past several years, and kind of know what that means in context of, the many elite players that have played in stores. But Sarah Strong is just such a gifted basketball player, and it's the way she shows up with her physicality, her shooting prowess, her timing, just the way that she is both a dynamic scorer and an incredibly just disciplined, high IQ basketball player. There's just been so many moments where she makes the smart play, where she's just can contribute on the court in so many ways that she's just a major threat to other teams. Like she's one of the best players in the country, and she's only a freshman. And I think part of that maturity comes from both of her parents were professional basketball players. She grew up part of her life in Spain as a child, and saw her parents playing professional basketball. I think she's come in with a level of basketball IQ, with experience about how this works, and she's just playing way far beyond what we see from most freshmen. And it's been really incredible to watch.
Yeah, I'm just so thrilled to think about how she's only going to get better. And we've only watched her for about half a season, if you include the NCAA tournament. And she's going to continue to grow, develop, and get better, presumably, over the next 3.5 seasons. And that's just really exciting to think about as someone who watches the game. And then who are you most looking forward to seeing or excited to watch the rest of the season?
On UConn's roster, I've been really impressed with and interested in seeing the development of freshman guard Morgan Shelley. She is a tall guard. I kind of think about her in the mold of players like Katie Lou Samuelson. I think that UConn really likes a big wing type guard who can stretch the floor, who can rebound, but who's also an elite shooter. And I've seen just really great minutes from Morgan Shelley. She's been able to fill in some gaps when players have been out injured. And I'm just really excited to kind of continue to see her develop and really enter the rotation. Obviously, we got some seniors on the team, like Paige Beckers will be leaving, so that it's kind of the next generation of UConn talent. And I really see Morgan Shelley stepping into that type of starting role eventually in her career.
Yeah, that was something that Gino Auriemma talked about last night, was that it's hard to play your way into the rotation when, sometimes the only way that that's going to happen is the person ahead of you either plays poorly or, gets injured, and he doesn't want either of those things to happen. So I think that's definitely something that he'd probably agree with, is just patience. But taking a step back and going back to December, UConn has 2 losses this season to Notre Dame and USC, with 2 non-conference games left to play, Tennessee and South Carolina, 10 days apart next month. What do you think that UConn has to take away from its non-conference losses to pick up a win in one or both of those games?
I think it's just about continuing to maintain consistency. It's kind of under acknowledged, in my opinion, that UConn lost its point guard, Nika Mule, an elite point guard, all Big East Defensive Player of the Year, and their dominant post presence in Aaliyah Edwards, both of whom are elite WNBA level talent. So they're kind of identifying what their rotation is and filling in those gaps. There's some youth on the team. There's some experimenting between Janelle Alfie and Ice Brady as the bigs. Different players are stepping into the point guard role. So I think it's just about finding consistency, finding the rotations that will be successful in the long run. And I think in both of those losses, we did see UConn in the second half be a different, better team. And I think sometimes the slow start comes from just, the facing elite talent and still figuring out what your talent looks like. So I think that those early season tests are crucial to the development of a team like UConn's roster this year. And I'm hoping to see, that evolution in their, 2 games against SEC, Blue Bloods, Tennessee, longtime rival, of course, and then South Carolina, who's the predominant program in the country right now. So I'm really excited to see kind of how they maintain and develop consistency and just kind of over time find out what their rotations are.
Awesome. Well, coming up next, we'll take a look around the rest of the Big East and take a look back at our discussion from our conference preview back in November. Today's episode is brought to you by Intuit TurboTax. This is a message from our sponsor, Intuit TurboTax. Are you tired of the endless waiting, wondering, and worrying about your taxes? Well, now that's a thing of the past. You see, taxes don't need to be complicated or stressful. TurboTax is here to change the game by matching you with a TurboTax expert who can get to work on your return right away. No more waiting for answers, no more wondering if you're missing out on deductions. Whether you've got one form or 20, TurboTax experts give your taxes their undivided attention. Will you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on what really matters? You won't have to lift a finger, but you'll get the peace of mind knowing that your taxes are being handled by the pros. Ready for stress-free taxes and the most money back guaranteed? Head over to TurboTax.com today and get matched with your expert who's ready to take your taxes off your plate so you can focus on your day. Only available with TurboTax Live full service. Real-time updates only in the iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at turbotax.com/guarantees. So now that we've talked about UConn, let's talk about the other teams that were expected to be at the top. How have Creighton and Providence fared as teams picked second and third in the conference's preseason poll?
Yeah, so I think, when I was on the podcast earlier this year, I really was talking about just the tremendous upside of the Providence Friars. And I think that so far this season, it's been a little disappointing to see kind of the way they started Big East play. They are trying to, I think, figure out their identity as a program. They have a second-year head coach in Aaron Bath. Grace Afosa is just an incredible talent. They have players like Emily Archibald. They have, just the pieces in place, but I think it's about putting those pieces together. So they've been off to a tough start. They haven't won a Big East game yet. So I'm really looking forward to seeing kind of how they grow over time. It's maybe it was a bit of an overestimation to put them at number 3 this year, but I think it signals that coaches are seeing the growth that's happening in that program and anticipating that in the years to come, they'll be one of the top teams in the conference. And then for Creighton, I mean, they have just been an elite program for the past several years. For the first time in program history, they reached the NCAA tournament 3 seasons in a row, the last 3 seasons. They're 5-0 to start Big East play. They have that core of Lauren Jensen, of Molly Mogensen and Morgan Molly, who have had so much experience together in tough moments, like in the NCAA tournament. And they're a top 50 net team. I anticipate that there'll be another team that'll be in the NCAA tournament this year. So they just have the pieces that are experienced and that know how to play in high pressure situations. And I think it's really showing this year with kind of how they've stepped into Big East play and how they've continued to just stay true to their identity of Creighton basketball.
And you just wrote about this, so of course we now have to talk about it. But going off of that, how has Lauren Jensen of Creighton impressed you?
Lauren Jensen's been impressive since I first learned of her. I mean, for those who may not have been as familiar, in 2022, in the second round of the NCAA tournament, she hit the game winner against her former team that she had transferred from in Iowa. And it's an Iowa team that was led by Caitlin Clark that was in the national spotlight. So Lauren Jensen demanded the spotlight in that moment. And in speaking with her and with head coach Jim Flannery, they really think that moment propelled her career. When you perform at a big level like that, I think it gives you confidence. It shows you can be a big time basketball player, and she's only grown. Her points per game have improved over time. Her efficiency, she has different ways to score on the court. She's really a 3-level shooter. She can hit from behind the arc, has a good mid-range game, and also can drive to the basket. So I've just been so impressed by her poise, by how she's really developed into an elite player in the Big East.
And then kind of pivoting, you wrote about this in one of your recent notebooks, but aside from Sarah Strong, who we've already talked about, who are some freshmen that have impressed you around the conference?
I am just so excited for the future of Big East basketball because there are some really elite freshmen. I think starting with Meri Kanerva, she is a point guard from Finland who plays for Xavier. She's played on the professional level in Finland. She just has a high basketball IQ, is really an elite guard, and she's helping to improve a team that really had one win last season that struggled, and has at this point in the season. Won significantly more games by winning 5 games than they did last season. So I think the trajectory is moving upward, and it's players like Kanerva who have come in, who have been recruited by head coach Billy Chambers, who are changing that trajectory. Another player is Jada Eads at Seton Hall, a 5'7" guard. She's just been honestly stepping into a starting role. She had her first start against Howard in December, and she's just been a walking bucket. Honestly, she has had 4 games with 20 plus points since her first start, including 26 against Butler, 27 points against Georgetown in their most recent game. So I'm just so excited. I love a small guard, that scrappiness, 5'7", and I'm just really impressed with her so far as a freshman.
Yeah, I will definitely have to check her out. And speaking of Meri Kanerva, who people need to go watch her. She was really fun to watch in that Xavier UConn game. But back in November, we chatted about Xavier and head coach Billy Chambers heading into her second season. I just saw them, but you're the Big East expert here. What have you seen from the Musketeers so far this season?
Yeah, well, for those who don't know, they have 12 international players representing several different countries across Europe. And I think, as we've seen with the UConn program over the past several seasons, international talent comes in differently than perhaps freshmen who had their high school experiences in the state, because oftentimes these players have competed internationally in FIBA tournaments, are in professional leagues in their own country. So just seeing that talent come together, I think, Billy Chambers was a first-year head coach, and now is stepping into the role, being able to bring her own recruits to the table. So I'm really excited to see that program on the upward trajectory. I think the coaching talent that the Big East has infused is really lifting all boats, right? Xavier has kind of existed at the bottom of the conference for several seasons, and to see them have that momentum, to see them have talent that's been brought in by their coach in her vision, has been really encouraging.
And then are there any other teams or any teams that look like they might be heading in a different direction, good or bad, after non-conference play?
Yeah, I think the Seton Hall Pirates have been slept on. They had a lot of roster turnover, but they brought in New Jersey native Faith Masonis after 4 years at Maryland. She is just a dynamic player. She's a really fun player to watch. She brings energy. She has fun on the court, and I think that's really infectious. And as I mentioned, Jada Eads, 5'7" freshman, she's been really holding down the scoring in Seton Hall. So I'm really impressed to see them start the way they have, undefeated in the conference, and just kind of continuing to put the pieces together. We know head coach Tony Bozzella is just a great motivator, cares about his players, cares about the culture he's building, and that really shows in the product that they put on the court.
And then in our November episode, you mentioned being excited to see the growth of Butler. How have they grown so far this season? And is there anyone that's impressed you?
Yeah, I mean, they're off to an 11-7 start. They started conference play 1-4, but they had some early tests. I think that's kind of where your schedule falls. I was surprised to see them lose pretty significantly to DePaul, a team that is maybe outperforming what my expectations were. But then they faced teams like Seton Hall, Creighton, had lost a close one to Marquette, finally picked up their first win against Providence. But I think they're just a team that I continue to see move upward. It's, again, a good hiring in Austin Parkinson, someone who's really adept at rebuilding a program. And I've kind of seen them over time develop, and I'm continuing to see that. So I think that trajectory is still there. It was a rocky start in the Big East, but I expect them to level out and find their way somewhere in the middle of the conference this season.
Awesome. Well, coming up next, we'll wrap up our conversation reflecting back on our preseason podcast episode and talk about what they're excited to watch for during the rest of the season. Today's episode is brought to you by Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That definitely happened to me. I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. For me, one of the best features is the subscription tracker. I've used it to cancel services I wasn't using anymore, and I've already saved a ton. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. So, T, preseason, you mentioned a few players. Let's check back in with them. Grace Afosa for Nia Mayo and Kelsey Ransom.
Yeah. I'm located in Providence. I have a chance to check out a lot of their games. So I've been just so impressed with Grace Afosa. She is a player who really embodies her head coach's spirit on the court, has a really high release on her jump shot, and is just really someone who brings such athleticism to the court. She's quick. She can drive to the basket. She's leading the Friars in scoring with 15.2 points per game. And then, Kelsey Ransom, Georgetown's leader. She's in her 5th year with the Hoyas. She's also leading the team with 20.9 points per game. She's really the heart and soul of that team. She's just someone who can do so much on the court. And a lot of it's on the defensive end. She's a hard defender. And then she's also delivering on the offensive side of the court, and that's improved over time. And then Nia Mayo, she is the second leading scorer on a St. John's team that's starting a little slower than I thought. But she really shined last season when conference play began. So I'm really looking forward to kind of seeing how she steps into, this final season with the Red Storm, and how she kind of contributes and hopefully ups her scoring percentage over time. I think seeing her as the second leading scorer, I was maybe expecting her to have more points than 9.3 per game, maybe scoring in the double digits. But I think over time, as we get into conference play, she's still a player to keep an eye on.
Always. And A10 fans will know that. And just her playmaking ability as well was always so much fun to watch. So moving on to kind of looking ahead to the future, who are you expecting to have a breakout conference season?
One person who I didn't mention when we were talking about the really gifted freshmen, of course, there's Sarah Strong. We spoke earlier of several freshmen that are sort of outperforming expectations. One that I didn't mention is Jasmine Bascow from Villanova. She is a Canadian guard. She played in FIBA international competition this past summer, was one of the top players, silver medalist. She's averaging 15.3 points per game. People may recognize her as the one who was tangled up with Paige in that injury situation. But that's because she's playing hard. She dives for the ball. She has really impressed so far and is just a freshman. I think for Villanova, there were so many unknowns coming into this season. And they needed to make up for the lost scoring production that left when Lucy also went to Iowa. And I think Jasmine Bascow has really stepped into that role of being one of those top scorers, and she's only a freshman. So the future is bright for her at Villanova.
And then what's been the most exciting part of the season for you so far? Was it Faith Masonis's game winner? Because I was showing that to everyone in my family that I saw in the days following that.
That is one of them. For those who didn't watch it, it was a last minute sort of behind the back, just trick shot from Faith Masonis to win the game against Villanova. So Seton Hall took that win. I think she's just, like I said, such a fun player to watch. And in that moment really personified the fun she's having on the court. Her teammates mobbed her. It was just a great moment. And so I think seeing her really thrive at Seton Hall, which again, she's from New Jersey, it's a bit of a homecoming. They recruited her out of high school, and just seeing the joy she's playing with has been really exciting for me. And I can't wait to catch her in person.
And then what are some other matchups or things you're excited to see in the next just about 2 months until the Big East tournament? Though I can't believe that's a true statement.
It feels like every season goes by faster, and the season is no exception. I'm circling on my calendar January 25th, when UConn travels to Creighton, and February 27th when Creighton travels to UConn. Those are the top two teams in the conference. They've kind of been that way, the kind of top tier for the past several years. And I think it's the highest level of competition UConn will face in the conference. And I'm just really excited to kind of see how those two teams, which are NCAA tournament talent teams, test each other. I'm really looking forward to seeing how, the adjustments that Creighton makes, how UConn's new roster, matches up against Creighton's more experienced roster. So I'm looking forward to those games, which I think will be very consequential for how the standings play out, because both of those teams are currently undefeated in the top of the standings.
And then last thing, where can the people find you in your work? And, is there anything fun you're working on that you want to kind of tease and make sure the people are looking out for?
So people can find my work on the Next. My social media handle is tbaker, TEE Baker _WBB for women's basketball. I am working right now on featuring some of the fifth year and senior talent in the Big East. For me, it's always really important to give these student athletes their due, to cover them before they leave the college game. So right now, working on some features for fifth year senior players. I won't reveal who, but that's a bit of a tease for you. Just really continuing, like I did in my Lauren Jensen piece, to feature the players who have grown up in Big East basketball and who are coming to the end of their college careers.
Well, that is exciting, and I will definitely be keeping an eye out for sure. And for our listeners, thank you for making Locked On Women's Basketball your first listen every day. Your favorite podcast now has a newsletter. Introducing the Locked On NBA Daily Newsletter. One stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at lockedondaily.com. That's lockedondaily.com, and start your day with the all-new free Locked On NBA newsletter. And make sure to tune in tomorrow to hear from our WNBA draft crew.